Hey guys, and Smooth Criminal here, and like I said in the last video, I have to go over this multiple times. Everything you see and hear is not owned by me. The image you see, I did not create. I do not own DC at all. And the My Hero Academia world, I did not create, nor do I own. So, well, this alternate universe I do. None of the characters I do, though. So this is What If. And yes, the Country Fet did a version of this. And if you want a DC My Hero mashup, go watch his, because this is going to be My Hero only. So, we start off with the parents of this lovely red-headed woman saying, "So, doctor, what is her quirk?" And he says, "This is a triple S rated quirk, and this quirk is so powerful that it might drive her insane into villainy." And they go, "Oh, okay." So they get the full story of the quirk, and this kid's only 2 years old. So if her parents leave her, she doesn't know. So her parents take her to an orphanage and drop her off there. Just completely leaving her there, abandoning her. And so someone walks by the orphanage and sees this little 4-year-old playing with plants. And he walks up and says, "What you doing?" And she, being very hesitant to talk to people, says, "Nothing, sir." And he's like, "Oh, you don't need to be formal with me. I'm just a friendly neighborhood person walking down the street wondering what a little kid like you is doing playing with some plants that could be very dangerous." And she goes, "Oh, these plants aren't dangerous, sir. These plants just want to look at the sun and eat the sunlight." And he goes, "Well, all plants do." And she goes, "No, no, no, these are sunflowers." And he goes, "But they're just budding out of the ground. How do you know that?" And she goes, I hear them." And he looks at her like she's crazy and goes, um, you can't hear plants. I'm sorry, but you can't." And she goes, "But I can. And they're happy." He says, "I'm sorry, but you can't hear plants. It's just something you're thinking up." And she starts to get angry, being like, "I can hear plants. I'm not going crazy." And all of a sudden, the sunflowers start to grow faster. She's getting mad at this man for not believing her, and these sunflowers are growing faster and faster. All of a sudden, they're giant sunflowers, and they have the biggest sunflower head, and they're not looking at the sun like they normally do. They're facing the man. And she calms down, being like, "See? They're sunflowers." And they turn slowly, because, yes, plants can move, but they turn slowly to the sun, and they look at the sun again, because Ivy's not controlling them. And he goes, "What's your name?" And she goes, "Oh, my name's Ivy. I don't got a last name." And he goes, "Okay, Ivy. Well, I have a proposition for you. And this proposition only will work if the person I'm going to contact will accept it." And she goes, "Sure, what is the proposition?" And he goes, "Give me a minute, I'll be right back." So this man walks away and calls someone, and this man, the someone he calls, is reluctant, but he comes down, and he sees this girl playing with different kinds of flowers. And he sees her plant an acorn, and the acorn immediately bud. And he's like, that's not normal. And this man says, oh, Aizawa, you're finally here. And he goes, yeah, that's not normal. Oh, and all the pictures that I'm going to be showing you, because this is going to be part 1, part 2, part 3, and part 4. Or, if you guys want to choose, this is picture 1, picture 2, picture 3, or picture 4. Or, sorry, it's the other way around. This one's 1, 2, 3, and 4. You choose which one you want me to show while doing these what-ifs. Because this is going to be a multi-series, and I want to finish this one and get this one good and done with. But he walks up to this girl who is petting this plant and goes, is your name Ivy? And she goes, yes. And she looks at this man and sees that he's very tired and he has chronic dry eyes. And she says, give me a second. So she runs over to the garden and she looks at a few plants and she starts talking to them. And she asks the plants, which one of you can help with dry eyes? And all of a sudden one plant starts budding and flourishing, answering her call, and she takes a little bit of it and says thank you, and she pets the plant and runs over to the man and says, if you put this in a tea, it will help with your chronic dry eye. And he goes, thank you? And she goes, you're welcome, and I would love if you would come back and tell me how it worked. And I can give the compliments to the plant. And he goes, oh, okay. And so he leaves, and the man that was talking with Ivy before leaves with him. A week later, Aizawa comes back, and he sees Ivy playing in the garden again. And he walks up to her and says, thank you, and give my compliments to the plant that allowed me to use it so I could help heal my dry eye. And she goes, will do, and you're welcome. So he's like, I have a proposition for you. And she goes, is it the same one that guy was talking about? And he goes, yes. If the plants here want to move with you and stay with you, we will move this entire garden, to my house. But if you want to start a new garden and come back here every once in a while to check on these plants and the garden at my house, then you can. But I would love to adopt you and bring you into my home. And she's like, adopt? What is that? And he goes, where I become your legal guardian, or I become your protector, and you stay the protector of these plants and the ones that you make at my house. And she starts jumping up and down saying, yes, 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 yes. And so the headmaster gets called out by Aizawa, and Aizawa says, I would like to adopt Ivy. And she goes, Ivy? Who's Ivy? And he points at the little girl, and she goes, oh, that brat. Do whatever. She never leaves that garden, so do whatever. And he goes, thank you, and if it's okay, and if she agrees, can I take this garden with me? She goes, I don't care, just get her out of here. And Ivy is talking with the plants currently, and she's asking if they would like to move with her. And she hears some of the plants saying yes, and then one of the plants saying no. And she asks the plant why, and it gives a good reason, because I'm allowing her to talk to plants. And she says, all plants except this one, points at one of them, wants to leave. And he goes, okay, why doesn't that one want to? And she gives the same reason that it gave her. And he goes, oh, okay, I understand now. So he calls in a crew to a florist crew to basically pick up the planters and the plants and move them over to his house and plant them down with more nutrients in the soil so they can root better. And Ivy arrives and she starts talking and speaking with the plants and discussing what is happening with them. And she walks into the house and sees that her room is right next to the garden and connected to the garden in a specific way that if she starts freaking out, he can just open a door, and if the plants can help, they climb into the room and help Poison Ivy. Or Ivy. And Aizawa says that your room is this one, and he points to the atrium kind of room, and she walks in and says, "This is perfect." And she says thank you, and we skip Nightwolf. Oh, but we skip 6 years, last day of elementary school, because she was told that she needs to go to elementary school to become the protector of all plants, and she understood. And she loves staying in the gardens for lunch and before school. And this is the last day of school, and the bullies wanted to get back at her for all the times that she used her quirk to entangle them with vines, give them rashes from poison ivy, or poison oak. Poison oak. Just to mess with them so they would stop messing with plants. So one of the bullies has a fire quirk and a very low heat fire quirk. And while Poison Ivy's currently in class, they sneak out of class and go to the garden and light it on fire. And Poison Ivy gets to the garden, and one of the plants survived and tells her what happened because she could still talk to plants. And she looks directly at the bully that lit the plants on fire, and she grabs him with the vines, lashing him down onto the ground and saying that he's the one who vandalized this lovely garden and killed all those innocent plants. And the headmaster of the elementary school sees her lash him down and hears what she said, and the headmaster runs up and says, can you please give your reason why before we go accusing? And she goes, I can talk to plants as part of my quirk. This plant, and she points to the only plant that wasn't charred to beyond recognition, is barely alive and survived the fire. And it told me exactly what happened. And she's pointing at the bully and says, he lit every single one of the plants on fire except that one. And she points back at the lonely plant that's left and says, this rose is the last rose in the entire garden. This is the first and last rose in the garden. And she starts getting pissed off, and plants start growing around her, like on her body. And they start rooting into her skin, and her quirk starts evolving. And the headmaster sees that she's getting mad and goes, okay, I'll punish him. And she goes, no need, I can do it right here, right now. And Aizawa, because it was close to the end of the day, and Aizawa normally comes, picks her up, and sees what's happening, and he runs over and uses his quirk to cancel out hers so she can't control the plants, but she can still listen and hear what the plants are saying. So she is not able to control the plants anymore, and she starts hearing that they're crying for her to stop. And he runs up to her and says, it's okay, he'll be dealt with. And he just says dealt with by spitting the words out. And she calms down, and he looks at her again and sees that her skin is now green and that she has leaves coming out of her arms, chest, and legs. And he goes, "This is strange." And she just is standing there, be like, "Why does the sun feel so good?" And so he's like, "Okay, I'm going to take you to the Quirk doctor to see what happened with your Quirk." And she goes, "Okay." So he goes to the Quirk doctor, and this is a special Quirk doctor. It's a hero's Quirk doctor because sometimes heroes' quirks change and manifest in a different way. And he asks this Quirk doctor to list all the abilities she has. And he just does one little tap on her forehead to get a link to her quirk. And he says, so she has plant manipulation. She's able to talk to plants. And she's able to live like a plant. What? Wait, she's able to live like a plant. And he goes, it says on the screen that I see when I use my quirk that she's able to eat like a plant. And she goes, oh, water, nutrients, and sunlight. And Aizawa looks at her and goes, what? She goes, that's how plants eat, is water, nutrients, and sunlight. And they give off oxygen, and they also give off carbon dioxide because of the need of oxygen to burn glucose. And she lays out all these plant facts that she's learned over the years from the plants themselves. And he goes, okay, so you're a plant now? And she goes, kinda. And the doctor in front of her goes, well, she can't eat normal food now. And she goes, wait, what? I can't have candy? And he goes, I'm sorry, but no. You can't have candy. But he pulls out a nutrient bar that he was going to give to his plants at home because his soil at his home was very barren and dry and nutrient deficient. And he says, but these nutrient bars that you bury under plants to give them nutrients are going to be like candy to you now. And he tosses her one and says, if you don't mind, I'd like you to at least lick it. And she goes, sure. And she licks it, just like, this tastes like candy. And Aizawa goes, oh, great. Now the thing that she needs to survive tastes like candy to her. And the doctor goes, well, if it makes any consolation, she's probably going to have to drink nutrient-rich water, which will taste like sugar water to her, but to normal people it will taste like normal water. Just with a lot more minerals in it. It'll taste like dirty water, actually. And he goes, oh, okay. And what about the sunlight issue? And he goes, as long as you have a skylight or an atrium around where she normally stays, she'll be fine. And he goes, well, that's settled. I got an atrium already for her. And he goes, see? Perfectly fine. Now, the room might be a little hotter than normal because of the greenhouse gases that are going to be released from her and everybody else who enters. But she's going to be so much easier to take care of now. No needing to buy food. Just needs to buy nutrients every week and keep up with her demand of water. And that's it. So we skip 5 years to the end of middle school, and Bakugo has been making fun of her. He's only been making fun of her. He hasn't bullied her. He's been making fun of her because she looks like a sprout, and she goes, huh, huh. It says this angry Pomeranian. So they go back and forth, and Bakugo actually has a crush on her, and she doesn't know this. She doesn't know anybody has a crush on her. She normally tries to stay in the gardens and stay away from large groups of people, and she can stop bullying from across the yard with her plants. So she's walking home one day from middle school, and this is the second to last day of middle school, and the Sludge villain attacks. And instead of the Sludge villain actually being able to take her over, since she doesn't need to breathe as often as normal because she can take oxygen through her skin, plants start growing around her, and she starts phasing through the plants because she's more plant than human now. The only human part of her is her brain. So she starts phasing through the plant around her, and the Sludge villain gets stuck there. And she says, "So, how'd you like my little new trick?" And this villain is like, "Where the hell did you go?" And this is a female Sludge villain, not a male Sludge villain. And she goes, "Well, nice seeing you. You shall now go to the police station." And she talks to the plant, saying that this orb needs to go to the police station, and it starts to move really, really slowly, but it starts to move. And All Might goes, "Haha, I am here," and is about to land on the orb that had the Sludge villain, when he immediately gets lashed to the top of the underpass with vines, and he goes, "What the hell?" And she goes, "You're about to open the capsule that had the Sludge villain. Be more careful next time. Damn symbol of peace." And she slowly lets him down and says, "And also, those weeds that you stepped on while you're going through the sewer, go apologize." And he sees who it is and is like, "Oh, young Aizawa, hello." And she goes, "Go apologize to those weeds. I'll give you a rash that won't wash off for 3 weeks." And he goes, okay. And everybody knows that she uses poison oak to torture the people that wrong plants. So he goes down to the sewers and he says sorry to the weeds, not knowing if they could hear him or not. And she goes, "Thank you. Now, if you would not be so bothered as to escort this orb to the police station and explain to them that in this orb is the Sludge villain, and if they open this orb at all, the Sludge villain, who is female, will get out." And he goes, "Yes, ma'am." And he starts walking with the orb, and the orb is going a little bit faster than what you would think, because normally the orb would travel like a snail's pace, but since Ivy has the ability to control plants, she sped it up. So it's going at a little slower than a human's walking pace. So All Might's just walking with it, but he buffs down, and Ivy walks up to him and says, "You're not taking your medication, are you?" And he goes, no, I'm not." And she goes, "You need to take it. It will help with your time limit, and it will help with the pain." And he goes, "What pain? I don't feel pain." And then she just pokes him in the side where his wound is, and he winces in pain. He goes, "That pain. That's the pain I'm talking about." He goes, "Yes, ma'am." And she goes, "Are you out? Because if you're out, you just remember, call me and I will get you more. He goes, I'm not out. I just don't like tea. And she says, put some sugar in it and you'll like it. He goes, okay, I'll try. So the sludge villain doesn't escape. She gets home. Aizawa asks why she's late. She says she ran into All Might and he wasn't taking his medication, his tea medication. And he goes, oh my god. Even I know to take your tea medication. And she goes, right? It helps, doesn't it? And he goes, oh, hell yeah. I haven't had my chronic dry eye in forever. Ever since you were 4. And she goes, oh yeah. That is how we met, wasn't it? And he goes, yeah. But you got to get ready for the UA entrance exams. And she goes, I want to get in by recommendation. He goes, oh, really? She goes, nah. Oh, Ken Kaneki, I know you're watching this, but bruh, you have some great ideas and you bring up some great points sometimes too. And I agree, once he became king, it just went downhill. But back on topic, I'm going to end this at the first day. And she goes, fine, I'll train. And she goes out to her plants. She meditates. She doesn't go for physical training. She doesn't go for endurance. She meditates. She uses her quirk to increase the density of her muscles because her muscles are basically plant fiber at this point. She's basically made out of plants. She can still physically have a child like a human and mentally like a human, but she's made out of plants. So she meditates for the 6 months, and it's now the entrance exams. And she goes to the entrance exams and walks in and does the test before anybody tells her to start and is done within 5 minutes. So she flips it over and Mike says start, and she just gets up and walks over and hands it to him, and she says, tell Nezu that if he doesn't make a harder test for me to do in 1 week, I'm not giving him another tea bag. And Nezu, who's hearing this entire conversation, is like, oh crap, and he starts writing down questions that frantically to see if he could make a harder test. And so it's now the practical exam, and Izumi starts to stretch and warm up, and this girl walks by her, and she has clown makeup on, and she's like, why do I think I know this person? And so she walks up to this girl and asks what's her name, and she goes, oh, my name is Toga, but I prefer Harley Quinn now, because everybody knows Toga is the weak little girl who got beat up by her father. So I'm Harley Quinn now, and my quirk, insanity. And she goes, well, nice to see you again, Toga. Been a while. And she goes, oh, Ivy! Is that really you? And she goes, yeah. So they start talking, they get along, and Mike says, go! And Toga pulls a hammer out of nowhere, and it's a really oddly shaped hammer. It's too big for a normal person to wield. And Ivy says, that's insane! And she goes, yeah, that's my quirk. And so she starts crushing robots with the hammer, and Ivy starts growing plants out of them to bind them and break them from the inside. And they get a good amount of hero or villain points, and then Nezu says, "Release the zero pointer!" While he's still working on the test, and Aizawa presses the button and goes, "You want me to release 2 in that section?" And he goes, "No, I have a test to write. I can't keep an eye on them." He goes, "Yes, sir." And he presses the button again in a certain section, and another door opens, releasing another zero pointer. And Toga, being a Harley Quinn clone, yes, I know she's going to be a Harley Quinn clone. That's the only 2 people I'm adding to this series. Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn. That's it. So Toga sees this and jumps super high up in the air. And Ivy remembers what Toga said about her ability. She can do anything that makes people think that's insane, or say that's insane. And it's strange. So she's like, okay, so that one's dealt with. And she looks over at the other one and goes, huh. And she pulls a Kurenai Genjutsu, the tree binding death. So a tree sprouts up from behind the zero pointer and locks it into place, and a giant form of poison ivy shows up behind it and rips its head off, and it slowly transforms into a tree, and it slowly loses all of its features and turns into a full tree. And Poison Ivy's still just sitting on the ground being like, that one looks a little off. And Harley Quinn is sitting next to her now and goes, yeah, I think if you move the middle finger straight up and the rest of them into a fist. And Poison Ivy goes, nah. I know. And she's like, what if there's a rose on that head? And so this giant rose that's bigger than anybody has seen before sprouts out of nowhere on the head of the zero pointer and freezes. It freezes wide open, like it looks like the rose that you see here, but without the vines. It's just sprouting out of the tree. And it's on the head of the zero pointer, and she's like, yeah, there we go. So they are like, we need to talk more. And Harley Quinn's like, yeah. Poison Ivy's like, definitely. And they wait a week and they get their letters. And Harley Quinn runs over to Aizawa's house, which she knows where it is because Poison Ivy told her. And she knocks on the door. Aizawa answers the door and says, yes. And she goes, can I speak with Ivy? And she's jumping up and down, and he goes, sure, she's in our atrium. And he points her to the door that it leads to the atrium and says, careful, it's quite hot in there. And she asks, is it insane? And he goes, no, just quite hot in there. She goes, aw. Okay. And she runs in there and she slams the door, being like, Ivy, I got it. And Ivy just looks up and goes, I heard you coming from a block away. You accidentally stepped on a root. 3 weeds and what you call weeds and 2 dandelions. And she goes, oh. She walks over to the garden and bows, saying, I'm sorry that I hurt any plants from before and after this meeting. And she runs back in, and Poison Ivy goes, you know that saying, I heard it through the grapevine? Harley Quinn goes, yeah? Poison Ivy starts laughing, going, I can literally hear things through grapevines. And she points up, and these vines are all hanging down from her roof. And Harley Quinn goes, are you talking with vines again? And she goes, no, not again. I've been talking with vines ever since I was little. Remember? And she thinks back and goes, oh, yeah. Well, you got your letter? And she goes, no, I got a digital device. I didn't get a letter. You got a digital device too, because letters are made out of paper. And Nezu knows that if he makes stuff out of paper, he's going to get a good, stern talking to from me, and no tea bags for a month. And Harley Quinn goes, oh, wait, he gets tea from you? And she goes, yeah, I can make his perfect blend. Duh. And she goes, oh, can you make me coffee? And she goes, the amount of caffeine you want in it? No. But I can make you coffee beans. Some really good coffee beans. And she goes, that's fine, as long as it's black. Very, very black. Insanely black. And no, not the skin tone, the type of coffee. Black coffee is coffee without creamer or anything in it. So I'm going to end it there. It's right before the first day. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. See you guys later. Bye.